We are almost done with this painting. I do want to mention that I used my magic eraser a little bit right here. You'll notice the black is gone, and what I did was just moisten the magic eraser and just scrubbed right here, and it really cleaned up this black spot really well. I was looking at the picture, the original picture of the dog, and he doesn't have any black right here, and I had put black right there. So I'm going to use the fur brush to define the tail area. Here's my palette. I'm just going to get a little bit of, I like to keep my palette a little bit dirty, if you will, because so many of these shadow areas can be done with just whatever you got laying around on your palette. So I'm going to do that. I'm just picking up just a little bit of color. And I think what I'm going to do is moisten my painting a bit, just in this area where I want to define the tail, because I do want to keep it soft but not too soft. So now I've got it wet, and now I'm going to take some paper towel and just blot a little bit just to keep it soft. And then you want to work pretty quickly after you do that, because believe it or not, the paper dries quicker than you might think, which you will find as you get used to using watercolor. And this stage is what one watercolorist I read, and I've read a lot of watercolor books, and I suggest you do the same. He called this adding the jewelry. And you do want to be careful when you're adding the jewelry, which means you're adding the little last minute details. You know, just like adding a wonderful necklace can make an outfit beautiful, but if you put on a necklace and 5 rings and a bunch of bracelets and etc., it can get overwhelming pretty quickly. The same is true of painting. At the last stage, you want to put on that jewelry, but you don't want to go too crazy. You want to edit your paintings. Remember, you want to think in terms of guiding someone's eye around the painting and where do you want them to focus. We wanted the focus probably to be on these eyes, so the jewelry here is the little glint in the eye, the detailing around the eye, making sure that all those details are there. Also, when you're working on animals, you want to keep in mind you don't want them to look like they're floating. So how do you do that? Make sure you get the shadows dark enough under them, which I just noticed under this leg right here, it's not dark enough. So I'm gonna get some black and put a little bit more shading under his leg here. I'm gonna vary this line a little bit more than what I had it, because that's a little bit more realistic. And then the dog has a shadow under his mouth too in the picture. And I want to delineate the bottom of his mouth a little bit more to pop this area out. So I'm going to darken this whole area because I really want to pop this area right here out, and see how that's really popping it nicely. There's some effective jewelry right there. Look how much better that looks already. Really shows where his little mouth ends. That looks a lot better. And I'm just getting some burnt sienna now, and I'm gonna just add some texture to the ground here. And now I'm rinsing out my brush and just putting some pure water just to kind of add more texture. Putting a fairly creamy consistency on my brush of this paint, because these black areas really need to be black here to help this pop, I think. So, very creamy consistency right there on my paintbrush. Leonardo da Vinci's paintings look very sculptural because he uses such a nice range of tones, and he makes sure his darks are really dark and his lights are really light, and that really does help with the reality of his paintings. Okay, we've got our dark darks, we've got our light lights, and we've got those contrasts in the center of interest. Very dark area right here next to the white of his eye and the white of his nose, and he's got a little glint in his eye. We've got that jewelry of his glint in his eye and the little fur details around his eyes. And then we've got the rest of the painting carrying that, staying subtle, but having the detail it needs to read dog, but not so much detail that it detracts from the center of interest. So this is all kept soft, and this is kept specific and detailed in the area of interest, if you'll notice. We put washes over these white areas down in here because we don't want the eye to go there. It still reads white to the eye if you just look at it, but with that little light wash over these areas away from the point of interest, it draws the eye to the whitest of the whites, the darkest of the darks, and the jewelry, which helps you focus in on the point of interest. So we used our elements well, I think, in this painting to kind of guide the eye to the area of interest.